language to discuss with them, they'll probably know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Another observation I have is the 2 degrees of separation. So because you've got those 2 degrees, you never really know what your target audience are really going to do with it. No real clue. So it's just like using the statistical analysis you're talking about. Really just moving it closer to the target instead of just doing random shit.
Yeah. So this whole framework, it's not a magic make game button. It's really just to help you discuss and organize your thoughts and how you approach the game, more than solving problems for you. So you never really know these things. That's why every book you read on game design or article or anything will just say you need to iterate, playtest and tweak variables, add mechanics, remove mechanics, do these things hundreds of times, and the game will be better by the end of it. That's basically the only known way to do it at the moment. But things like behavioral economics, which was a big thing at the last GDC a few weeks ago, are becoming more widely used as tools for analyzing dynamics. So especially for social games, it's like Farmville stuff. They use behavioral economics in that in order to kind of guess what's going to happen. But they also use this thing called scientific game design, where they just change stuff and see what happens. But because they've got what it's up to, something like 20 million players a day or something. On Farmville now, they can make tweaks and see all the numbers change, see how this tweak affected their income, basically. So,
does anybody here play Farmville?
I played it for a day just to try it out and then got bored.
I have a question. Would anyone here admit they played Farmville if they actually did play Farmville?
I just did.
Why you?
Yeah, his question was clearly rhetorical, and he just no answer.
I mean, this isn't really the target audience for Farmville.
Yeah. Do you know what is the target audience for Farmville?
Idiots.
It's people who play it, basically.
That's what I was mentioning. How many people play it?
I think it's still boredom issue.
It's people who work full time in an office.
So it's for people who want a game but don't actually but won't consider Farmville gaming.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing.
Games are bad, but I don't play games.
Yeah.
What
What they mean is they don't play hardcore games. So it's mostly casual
grind. That's it.
Yeah, but I mean there's lots of hooks into it. Like I was analyzing it, and it's pretty insane. Like the amount of social pressure there is once you start playing to keep playing, because you help your friends and then they get bonuses for you helping them. So if you help them, they're expected to kind of help you in return.
It's like all this movement.
But they won't, because all the friends.
Yeah. But I mean, if you have like a whole social group that gets into it, then it can get really addictive.
I should check out my phone.
And also the mechanic of going back to harvest your crops is really good, because it keeps people checking, see if they.
My sister's like a massive fan of the game. She loves it.
Yeah.
It's really funny that her major fun in this type of thing is sorting. She's been doing it since she was a little kid. Sorting is what she finds fun.
So that's expressionist.
Yeah. So like that's one of the things that can fit.
Yeah. So
it's weird because there's a lot of people with fun Sudoku and that sort of thing, solving the puzzle.
Yeah. So like Farmville, the aesthetics that it has, mainly fellowship, but also the expression, because you can set up your farm however you want. And like my wife spent like hours moving things around in her farm so that she had the like white picket fence and everything perfect, so that when people visited her farm it wasn't a mess. So people do this like that. That's one of the reasons why it's so popular.
So does most game design started looking at the desired aesthetic?
I mean, it depends on how you do it. I mean, some.
I don't know of some games that have started as mechanics and end up actually being fun. Like one example of the Flash game N that just started off as proof of a two-dimensional physics engine in Flash.
Yeah, so a lot of games do that, like mostly Will Wright's games.
Yeah.
So like SimCity and that. Most of his games start off with mechanics, and he tries to build a game around it. But I think a majority of games use this aesthetic model. So like Gears of War or something, like, oh, let's make an awesome shooter
With chainsaws.
Yeah, with chainsaws and all this stuff. And then so from there they figure out the dynamics and the mechanics to do that.
It's funny, I don't think you could create a game based off the dynamics. Like, how would you would start with dynamics? That would be weird. You could start at one end or the other.
Yeah.
That's sort of an odd game though, if it starts from dynamics. Like if you're trying to actually design a meta game for people to play and you don't care about the means.
Yeah.
It's sort of like
Well, I mean, so this is one of the reasons why having this model is good, because now we've established that not many games start from dynamics, so you can kind of think, oh, how would I make a game from dynamics? Yeah. So some games might, so games with bluffing as a main dynamic, but that's...
But if you started with if you like actually purposely created that, nothing mechanics sense.
Well, you're creating mechanics to do the bluffing, yeah. But if you say, like, my game has to have bluffing, but I mean, that's probably, you really actually want an aesthetic that bluffing creates.
Yeah.
So maybe you're just hiding the aesthetic by saying you want bluffing.
Also, how many like actual things like building games that could be implied like that?
Yeah.
Like instead of having a mechanic that does it, you could imply that it's possible through like mechanics to actually build it there.
Yeah.
That would be
I mean, that's
optimized.
yeah. So dynamics. Another name for dynamics is emergent gameplay, which was a big thing in the late '90s. Everyone wanted to do because of Half-Life mostly. Yeah. But yeah. Any other thoughts?
I'm not so sure, I'm not convinced that aesthetics are a useful concept.
Yeah, a lot of people aren't.
They seem to be very, but they tend to sort of run together from what I've seen, and I think it's very hard to predict what aesthetic people find in video games. The number of video games I can think of where any one of millions of aesthetics can apply to individual games.
Can you list the millions?
No, that would take a while.
But you can think of any random game, you know roughly what the major experience from that game was. So that's the
For
main.
me, I'm not sure I can talk about what would be for the population as a whole.
I'm going to go right ahead, like, strongly disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, how many different ways are there to build a game like Final Fantasy or Zelda or students? It depends how flexible the game is. If you put a linear gameplay,
The TF2 is like fellowship and challenge mostly.
It's something like Dwarf Fortress.
I didn't expect you to use that example.
I'm not sure that Dwarf Fortress is really a game either. It's more of a Dwarf Fortress is more of a simulation than a game.
totally.
It's a game of you.
for that to be a simulation.
It's got a loss condition. It's got a world.
It doesn't have a win condition.
Sure it does.
It's
It's the loss condition.
Well, neither does
I guess.
Sims though. Sims doesn't.
Yeah, so
SimCity doesn't have a win.
the thing is, like, Will Wright even says that he doesn't make games, he makes toys. So if you can just play with it, like a ball is not a game, it's a toy. But then you add rules to the ball and then you get a game.
So is SimCity a game?
Yeah, so Will Wright has said himself that he doesn't consider it a game, it's a toy. And the scenarios are games, because the scenarios are like, do this by this time. But the framework itself is a toy.
And then
But I mean, that-
your argument that people invent their own games for which is like
Yeah, so Dwarf Fortress is a framework for playing a game, but it's not. I don't consider it a game.
I could give that.
It's a technical distinction.
What's your argument? Is your argument that the aesthetics are not, like, valid because Dwarf Fortress
is ugly.
No, that was an example. And shut up.
Right.
No,